Today I'm joined by two channel legends, Howard M. Cohen, a 35-year veteran of the IT partner ecosystem and founder of HMC Right Now, and Karl Palachuk, the pioneering author of Managed Services in a Month and founder of Small Biz Thoughts and the NSITSP. Together, we'll explore how Agentic AI is transforming managed services, from automating up to 80% of routine tasks to redefining roles, workflows, and business models. Expect sharp debate on what's hype, what's real, and how MSPs can adapt before automation outpaces them. And we'll be taking your questions. It's Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, and I'm Dave Sobel. Welcome to the Business of Tech Lounge, the live version of the Business of Tech podcast. I really do welcome questions and comments throughout the show, so please submit them in the chat. If you have a question, we'll happily respond to it. I want to send thanks to ABC Solutions, a Business of Tech Plus supporting vendor. ABC Solutions specializes in accounting, supporting managed service providers and IT firms. Check them out at abcsolvesit.com. And thanks to Sales Builder, also a Business of Tech Plus supporting vendor. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. And our live stream support is provided by Rhythms, delivering 5G connectivity solutions for MSPs. Reliable internet access for everyone. Visit rythmz.com for more information. Reminder, I am watching chat and I will take questions in real time. Howard Cohen is a veteran of the Information Technology Channel with more than 35 years of experience. He writes and speaks extensively about the IT channel, MSPs, and partner ecosystems. And he owns the content service HMC Right Now. Howard, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Great to be back.
And I'm looking forward to mixing it up because I also have Karl Palachuk, who's been active as an IT consultant since the mid-1990s and is widely recognized as a pioneer of the managed services business model for small and mid-sized IT service providers. He's the author of more than 20 books, including bestsellers such as Managed Services in a Month, and has spoken in over 20 countries, and we co-host the podcast Killing It Together. Karl, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here again.
Well, I'm excited to mix it up with you two guys, particularly because today Howard's been exploring the space of agentic AI and what it means for managed service providers. So Howard, I'll let you go ahead and give a little bit of the baseline. What have you been writing on and exploring so that we can explore some of those topics?
Okay, well, in conversations with many MSPs, there's clear confusion in the channel. A lot of people simply flat out say, I don't understand what to do with it, what to use it for, how to sell it. And it's surprisingly widespread. Of course, there's a ton of misinformation. Some of it's showing up at some of the channel conferences, which kind of alarmed me. I created Gentic MSP as a Substack. It's agenticmsp.blog. To provide to MSPs the news that they need, the news that's pertinent to them, relevant to them. I basically said, okay, if I'm going to learn AI from me being an MSP, these are the things I would read. These are the things I wouldn't bother with. And so instead of everybody having to go through that weeding out, I'm doing it for them and I'm sharing my homework.
Okay. Now I'm going to follow up with a little bit of a kind of a question. Like, how are you defining agentic AI? Because it feels like every vendor and the other vendor and the vendor's mother has slapped AI on their marketing label to talk about how it's embedded in PSA tools and RMM tools and the idea of streamlining triage. But do you have a particular definition that helps frame it?
Oh, yeah. Actually, I wrote about it. If you go to agenticmsp.blog, you'll find it. You're already agentic is the name of the article. This is not any different from what we went through with cloud. Everything was cloud. I mean, I saw guys selling cloud mouse pads. I was always confused as to how they did that. But with agentic simply means having the agency to accomplish something. That means, in terms of AI, that you are creating, using AI, a program, a system, a routine, something that can do something ostensibly on its own, but not necessarily. Some of the best experts in the field have pointed out that there are really two kinds of agent. There is, on the one end, the assistive agent, who's there to assist you in doing what you do. For example, it's redefined search. Uh, an AI based browser can do search for you much faster than any search engine ever could. And that's just one example. There's plenty of examples of the agent helping you do what you do. On the far other end are the autonomous agents, an agent that you set up and give it instructions, let it know what to look for. It makes decisions and it takes actions. It actually has the agency to take actions to do what you ask it to do. Ostensibly, you don't need to supervise it at all. Now, that's the agent that everybody is afraid of, that'll just go off and do its own thing. Also, though, in most of the commentary I'm reading, it's really hard to come up with use cases for that autonomous agent. Everybody's having a challenge figuring out what they want to automate that completely. So I think there's still a lot to be learned.
Okay. So, Carl, I know you're spending some time in your conversations with your community members, and you've been thinking about this too. Let's give me a little bit of your framework of the way you're thinking about AI managed services before I dive into some specific questions.
Well, the first response I had to Howard's article was actually that, this is just the next level of automation, which we have done since day one, right?
Yep, right.
Um, the other thing is, it harkens back to something that the three of us experienced a long time ago, which is you have to be a solution provider. You cannot be just the computer guy, the tech nerd, whatever. You want to know a use case? Go to an attorney and say, how do you move data? How does data get into and out of your business, and what do you do with it? And if they're looking for patent violations, okay, well, let's see if we can find a better way to look for that. Right there's always something that could be better in every business, and particularly if your clients are people who move data, if they're in the information business of any kind, and that's a lot of businesses. There's a lot for them to be able to do. The low fruit is learn it yourself and then hold educational seminars for your clients to address their fears. Let them know, hey, you know what? There's a line here where you just ought to be afraid, but there's also stuff over here where you can get large benefits from it, but you have to kind of have some idea what you're doing. So I always think that educating clients is a great way to start.
Gotcha. Now, Howard, you've written about some of the dramatic improvements in speed and automation and predictive maintenance. That feels like it aligns with what Carl's approach of like automation accelerated. Are there particular operational wins that you think MSPs are looking for or can deploy right now around agentic AI, or is it still theoretical? Like, wrap my head around that.
I'm not sure that MSPs have yet figured out what those end results can be. I think
Okay.
it's a great exercise, and it's going to be the best experience for them to experiment with that. But again, coming back to Agentic MSP blog, one of the things that I talked about was you have to figure out where you want to fit. There are many different roles that an MSP can take in bringing AI to their customers. Carl recommended several of them. You go all the way to the other end. If an MSP has access to true development capability, most people are vibe coding these days, which means you just tell it what you want it to do and it kind of does it. That's not application development in any way, shape, or form. One of the best experts that I've listened to, Nate Jones, talks about how you need engineering experience, you need systems architecture experience if you're going to build real applications. So again, there's a self-selection kind of thing that I think the MSP has to go through. If you don't have those skills, don't even try to offer application development to your customer. On the other hand, you're eminently capable of helping them develop ways in which they can use AI in what I like to refer to as Copilot mode. If you ask anybody at Microsoft, what is Copilot? Their answer, like automatically, is it's your personal assistant. Everybody I've asked from Microsoft, it's your personal assistant. Well, that's really true. That's really true. But another thing I wanted to point out while we're talking about agents, another expert that I recommend everybody follow is Andrej Karpathy. Karpathy was the senior research director at Tesla. He's one of the co-founders of OpenAI. He's brilliant, and he's very, very good at explaining things in terms people can understand. Somebody did a 2.5 hour interview with him recently that's actually worth listening to, the entire 2.5. One of the things he says that's most important is that this is not the year of the AI agent. This is the beginning of the decade of the AI agent. There's a whole lot more development that's going to have to take place before we can do many of the things that people envision and are already talking about.
So, and by the way, I'm just going to say, like, I am on board with I think vibe coding is garbage. And I will say my incredible bias is I have a degree in computer science. I learned to program the classical way. I will completely say, like, it has made me a better programmer and dusted off skills that I hadn't used in a very long time. But the reason I'm effective with it is that I have the classic basic knowledge of understanding how to use the tool. And I keep looking and saying, this is accelerating things that I'm good at. I'm not convinced it's necessarily ready to go off and do the things that I'm not good at. Karl, what I want to throw to you is this kind of you're my master of SOPs, the person who thinks about operating procedures all the time. I would think instinctually that MSPs would be very good at accelerating the automation of people's business process. But watching the market, that doesn't actually seem to be true.
Right.
And I want to get you. I kind of want to get your take. You immediately agree with me. I want to get your take of why. Like, what's the disconnect between people that are good at operations and doing all of those pieces, and why they're not able to translate that into stuff for their customers?
Well, part of it is simply that they either are out of practice or they've never done it. There's a generation that started with helping clients automate things like, how do we get images into the computer? Well, there's a thing called a scanner and they're ridiculously expensive, but I can help you use them right. Okay. That generation, maybe that information is not quite as valuable as it used to be. But there's also a whole group of people who grew up being IT consultants who didn't have to learn those things. They literally go out, sell a client on the cloud, attach them to Google or Amazon or Microsoft, and make a few connections. They don't even have to know TCP/IP in order to be a legitimate IT consultant making a whole bunch of money in managed services. So they don't have this whole layer of skill that is related to being, a problem solver in the sense of helping people with their processes. And it's not that they can't or they won't, it's just they haven't needed to. And now, thankfully, I think we're getting back to an era where you will need these skills. And, there was a time when nobody knew anything about Active Directory, and we certainly didn't know how SQL servers worked, but we learned those things in order to solve problems for clients. And I think we're going to see the same thing. IT service providers better learn how to spell MCP and how to build MCP servers and help their clients move data back and forth and interact with their clients. And to be honest, there's no better way to sell your services today than help a client with a technology that nobody else has figured out. And when they go to their clients and say, we need to make this connection, you got to call Howard because he knows how to do this, right? That is going to be a beautiful thing for those who get on board. And I know people always said with the era of the cloud, oh, I'll just put it off until somebody else has figured it out. Then I'll copy their SOP, right?
Right.
I don't think you can wait for this one. You can't be in the second or third wave of people who figure this out.
Karl, you bring up a really important point too. You talk about MCP. When MCP was introduced, the idea that you could have multiple LLMs, multiple engines, multiple models sharing context amongst each other, nobody knew what that meant. So they didn't really know, should I do that? Should I use that? And more recently, Anthropic introduced Claude Skills.
Mhm.
And the word is that Claude Skills are being adopted at a rate like 100x the MCP adoption. I think that we're going to be responsible for helping customers with skills while a lot of those skills are still being invented. They're not even there yet. I mean, MCP is only a few months old. A2A is a few months old. Those are the first two protocols we got, agent to agent and model context protocol. I think that, it's going to be very interesting trying to snowboard on, snow that's flying down the mountain.
Right.
Fun.
Now, it's interesting because Microsoft just launched App Builder too. So, like, which is, for those watching the daily version of the Business of Tech reported on as well there. But Howard, I kind of so Carl brings up like this the skills gap piece, and you've written extensively now about suggesting that staff roles will shift significantly as AI takes on more routine tasks. Okay, I'm buying into this theory, but at the same time, we already have staff that may have skills gaps and may have issues with the stuff that they're living on now. Now we're going to shift their roles. Do you see new skills or roles, or do we have to turn over people? Like, how are you thinking about the workforce as you think forward with this agentic move?
Well, and again, it's the same thing. You adopt tools to do what you do. So it's not like everybody's going to have to adopt all the tools that come out for AI everywhere. It's not like that. There are going to be tools that cater to what you as an individual worker do. There's going to be a whole world of new skills around creating spreadsheets. I mean, Claude is now connected to Excel. So you can use Claude to do amazing things in Excel that you could probably do yourself, but you'd have to hunt around for the commands and you'd have to work at it. It would take you hours and days. Claude can do it in seconds. It is a function of speed, just like it's always been. It's how can we do these things faster? So I think that you're going to see tools for specific roles that make an awful lot of sense, and you're going to see more verticality as we go. I'm already seeing it in some places, most especially in the public sector. But at the same time, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, sharing my homework per se, putting out the information that I think is useful to our community to learn what they need to learn to help their customers, because it's going to be pretty broad for them.
Well, I think James has the transition question here that I want to throw out there. And I think both of you may have useful perspectives on this. I will throw to Carl first on this one. Should MSPs be actively building internal expertise in agentic AI right now, or is it still too early? Carl, you want to weigh in first, and I'll throw it over to Howard?
Well, I think this is a slow pitch. I'm going to knock over the fence here. Of course, you should be, training up your staff. And, there's always the option of like, oh, should I build or should I buy somebody with these skills? And I would say today, the easiest thing to do is take somebody on your staff and say, who wants to be our AI person? And, we're going to train you up. We're going to help you pay for whatever it is, classes online or whatever. And then you need to talk to the rest of us about it. And in particular, teach us how we have to change our mindsets about what we sell, how we sell, and how we interact with clients. Because I think that there's no question that's where you're going to make money. But if you just delay and delay and delay and say, "Oh, I'll wait till the next generation," and then we'll get on board. Well, that's fine, but you may not have any money, coming your way if you're second generation. So getting somebody in your company up to speed and figuring out what are all the opportunities in front of us. Again, I think, if your clients are moving data in any way or having clients even fill out forms online, holy smokes, that can be automated. And you have to focus on solving clients' problems, not selling what you've got in your toolbox, right? If all you sell is hammers, everything looks like a nail, right? So, what is the client's actual problem? What is a need that you could look at and say, wow, this is a perfect use case for agentic AI?
Gotcha. And Howard, I know you want to weigh in on this one.
Absolutely. It brings me back to the earliest days of cloud, just as you said before, Dave. In the earliest days of cloud, I can't remember how many presentations I did where at some point I said, listen, you have to get involved with cloud. You have to adopt cloud. You have to learn how to use cloud. Because if you don't introduce your customer to cloud, somebody else will. It's a defensive strategy, if nothing else. The same thing is true here. If you look at people who got involved with AI back in 2020, 2022, they've got a huge jump on the rest of us. The first article I ever wrote on AI was in 2017 for OpenText with their Magellan product. And IBM Watson X was big then, and The folks at Crushbank have done some amazing work with Watson. You if you, as Carl said, if you keep on waiting, you're never going to start. You're going to say, well, it's not there yet. It's not there yet. And if you're listening to Carpathy, it's not going to be there for 10 years. Are you really going to sit there 10 years while it all goes past you? No, of course you're not. So you have to really think about, what do I really need to know? And again, and Carl said this, it becomes a buy, build, or broker, just like cloud. And there's an article in Agentic MSP blog about that. I'm hitting all the heights. I'm hitting all the big hits. But broker, I'll go to broker. There's nothing that stops you from finding partners. It's another thing that I'm going to be featuring in the blog. Partners who are out there creating solutions for customers leveraging AI. Some are going back to the customers they developed applications for years ago. And they're saying, look, I can make it do more now. I can improve this and get you more value out of it by integrating these AI capabilities into it. Others are simply going from scratch, sitting down with you, working with you to do discovery with your customer about what they're looking for. They have those development capabilities. They have engineering background, architecture background, solution architecture background. They can build formal, full-blown systems that leverage AI very, very, very nicely. So if you want to learn the basics yourself, you can also partner with somebody, and while they're doing it, they're all going to transfer knowledge to you. That knowledge transfer can be a big part of your education too.
Gotcha. Now I've got a thought on that question too, but I will remind listeners, if you've got a question, throw it in chat because we're certainly happy to take it. James, I'll give you a quick thought on this before I transition back to some of the other stuff I want to talk about today. My thinking on this is that agentic AI is marketing slang for better automation, and that the structure of good automation thinking is what we're seeing the results of. This feels like the child of robotic process automation, which was just simply too difficult to do, where the magic seems to be the natural language processing of it, that it can interpret and understand, I'm putting that in quotes, what the intention is with looser instruction sets, but ultimately it's still about automation. And I think that that's the thing to lean into is that this is a much better version of automation. And if you frame it that way, you can be much more effective. Howard, I know you're spending a lot of time looking at Microsoft's big bet here, and they're placing a lot of, investment and thought on this. Are there particular early lessons we can already see from Microsoft's strategy or the way they're going to market?
I think we're seeing some of that come out now as we're starting to see the emergence of AI native browsers. I just want to go back to what you were saying a moment ago about this being automation elevated. Automation was always based on if then else. If this is true, then do this, otherwise do this. And it was pretty much, polar. It was, yes or no, one or zero, black or white. With AI, there's a weighting system built in there that adds two very important elements. One of those is really evaluation, interpolation, extrapolation, being able to gauge the relationships between things in something less than 0 or 1. There's shades of gray in there, there's colors in there, there's all kinds of variations in there. The other thing is anticipation. If anybody has ever, interacted with a large language model trying to find something out, they actually do anticipate what else you may need. And that's based on instruction sets and weighting and training that they've been given. I like to say that we have artificial intelligence, but we don't have artificial intellect yet. So I think Microsoft was very clever in hedging their bets. At first, I was stunned that Copilot was not a large language model. It shocked me. I mean, how could Microsoft not have its own large language model? But they don't. They are developing them very quietly in the background, but Copilot uses ChatGPT 5. And now they've just switched the Copilot for Microsoft 365 is now using Claude. And I think it's owing to the fact that Anthropic has given Claude some very nice connections into the Microsoft 365 suite. So, Microsoft is tracking what's going on and using the best of it to make Copilot the ideal interface to many different possible models. The AI native browsers are doing the same thing. You can get an AI native browser that uses ChatGPT 5, Claude Sonnet and Opus, Gemini, DeepSeek. There's plenty of opportunity to do what Copilot is doing, but I would say, especially with the introduction this week of Copilot Voice, you can now finally say, "Hey, Copilot," and Copilot will respond. That was really missing. But for people, typical people, knowledge workers, to really get real use out of Copilot, they have to be able to discourse with it very comfortably, very naturally. And I'm sorry, but keyboarding is not the only way. So
I hope for you to be right on this one, Howard, because I've been predicting voices in interface for a decade now, and I've
I
been
was
wrong.
just going to say that.
I've been trying and trying, and I've been wrong for a decade. Now I see it directionally, and I'm bored. I want to, Sarah. I'm 100% with you. And when I talk about the breakout of automation, where I look at this and say is I think if then else structuring was the limitation that the computer couldn't process that, and the reason I look at it as breaking out is now we have that granularity, the gray area that we can do, but the principles of using the machine to take away these tasks are now just unrestricted by the methodologies that we were able to apply. And I think that's what makes it interesting. It leads me to a question kind of want to throw to Karl a little bit because Karl, I know you've thought about, governance and ethics around the frameworks of IT. This feels like an incredibly natural connection to what we're talking about here. I know you've got some thoughts on the way providers should be thinking about it.
Well, absolutely. And, I'm glad you brought that up because, I've done presentations on putting guardrails on your AI. And I think a lot of people haven't quite understood the conversation because they haven't quite understood what AI might be doing for them. But if you start with automation and you say, look, we helped a client do this, get connected to, a realtor, for example, getting connected to somebody else's database or an insurance company or whatever. Okay, we helped with that automation. We made that connection. Well, now we can do so much more. But we have to say, and if you stumble across any, personally identifiable information, you can't just gobble it up. You have to follow these rules because both parties have to stay compliant with whoever is, governing them and who they do business with, right? So it really has to be a truly smart interaction. And it used to be that we'd say, okay, if then else, right? If it looks like this, it might be a social security number. If it looks like this, it might be, whatever. And so now we can just say, look, go gobble up all the information that tells us about compliance and then figure out what, compliance applies to each of these partners and then apply those rules. I know that sounds pretty sophisticated, but it's super doable. And again, it's just a matter of somebody on your staff has to begin learning that. But somebody else can have the role of saying, what are our general guidelines for the ethical use of these connections, as well as legal and compliance-based use? And that may be your next job is AI-based compliance of stuff that other people are building.
Well, so you've set me up for where I kind of want to end the conversation a little bit. So I'm going to throw the same question to each of you because I want to get your take on directional. When I wrote this and was thinking about what I wanted to ask, I put out a date of 2030, but I knowing that's really hard to do. What I'm actually asking is hey, directionally, do you think that there are big, bold changes to the role of the managed service provider or IT service provider based on this shift? Or is it just an expansion or acceleration or something else? Do you have a prediction on what that changes to the role are going to be?
Well, I would say there's going to be a very significant bifurcation, and probably by 2030, where some people are just going to stay in what they're doing today. They've got a list of things, and here it is. Pick one of those, and I will hook you up, and we'll sell you managed services. The other way is people who become, modern solution providers and focus on that. And it may be that the MSPs, in the classic sense, hire the AI MSPs to do some of that work for them. But I think that bifurcation is going to happen, and I think it's going to happen pretty fast. And it may already be underway. It's one of those things that, like, in 20 minutes, somebody's going to make a presentation on how they're doing this.
Howard, what are your thoughts directionally on what the role of the provider is?
I think that we've already seen a bifurcation that resembles the one we're going to see again. I'm talking about at the time when cloud emerged as being something very desirable and everybody was starting to shift to cloud. And suddenly computer resellers discovered that they couldn't sell servers or storage or expensive equipment anymore. They're not going to make money, big money selling hardware. And a lot of them shifted to become managed service providers. Some of those that shifted took it very seriously. And we've talked about this so many times before, that continuum. Some went out there, they hired terrifically talented, knowledgeable people. They sent their own people to training and upped their skills tremendously. They developed formal methodology. As Karl always preaches, they developed a code of ethics and conducted themselves as true professionals. Then there's another community that simply had MSP stamped on their business cards, and that was about all they did. That still exists, and it's only going to get worse. AI, when you boil it down to what it really is, AI introduces a new set of tools that have been developed. And those tools are getting better and better. And those tools are far and away more powerful and more functional than any of the tools that have been introduced to us in the past. That means that bifurcation is only going to get wider. The people who really do the homework, who do the study, who become involved and really stay with the developments and what's going on, they will become true professional AI solution providers. Whereas those who had MSP stamped on their business cards, they're not going to have much left to do anymore. And that, I guess I'm encouraging everybody, this is something worth studying. If you were around back when PCs were new, PCs were worth studying, and I loved it. And I haven't felt the way I felt back then until now. And it's 40 years ago. So this is exciting. This is thrilling. And the fact that the information is emerging so quickly makes it even more so. So stick with it.
Well, I always say, like, history doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. so that optimistic message feels like a great place to end this. I know we could go considerably further. Howard, if people are interested in reading more about what you're up to and getting in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, I've mentioned Gentic MSP.blog several times. Please do subscribe. I also have a free newsletter called Tech Channel Results, which is at techchannelresults.blog. And that I'm really covering topics in the channel in general, more topics that are of interest to you in building your business than what the manufacturers are doing. I don't report manufacturer news there at all. So those would be really good ways to follow my stuff.
Gotcha. And Karl, if people are interested in continuing the conversation, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Well, as always, email me, Karl@karlpalachuk.com, or just go to anything, smallbizthoughts.com or org. And I'll be honest, if you're looking for stuff on MSPs, just click on anything on the internet, and I'm at no more than 3 clicks away from that. So,
see, Karl, you've done something right to be connected to all the bits of it.
Karl is Kevin Bacon.
It's true. Well, gents, I always love having you both on. Thank you for coming together to mix it up a little bit. I knew we'd have a bunch to talk about today, so thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I want to highlight that this weekend I'm dropping an interview with Andrew Jordan. He is a CPA that specializes specifically in IT services and MSP. And we talked about the recent tax code changes and their implications for managed service providers. He highlighted some key strategies, such as the benefits of bonus depreciation and the QSBS expansion that can help optimize your financial planning and enhance exit strategies for those looking to maximize their business value. Let me give you a preview of that interview. That you noted that the new overtime deduction might apply in some limited MSP cases. Clarify that a little bit. Like, where might it realistically come into play?
So, and one of the things that we have also seen in the political arena is the Congress will pass bills that will let the IRS sort of figure out the details. And so we have passed this and it got a lot of press, over time, but it doesn't actually apply to all overtime. So they're sort of still hashing out exactly what qualifies, what roles, what companies, what industries, potentially they're talking about limiting a bunch of different ways. But we should see how it shakes down, because if you are paying your people overtime, and I know a lot of managed service providers end up paying overtime at some level, it can be that overtime is exempt from taxes, which benefits your employee, but can also benefit you, because then you're potentially not paying those payroll taxes on those dollars. Again, depends on exactly how they end up figuring this when all the dust settles, but could be some significant dollars there.
Okay, it sounds like there's a little bit of still uncertainty. What are we waiting on to know, or how will that get shaken out to know if this makes sense?
Yeah, so the IRS is still figuring out exactly how they're going to enforce this, what the end forms are going to look like, what the actual calculations will look like in some cases, what sort of the limits will be. So it's open to a lot more interpretation by the IRS than, Congress kind of more said, this is what we want to have happen. And then the IRS is figuring out the details of how we're exactly getting there.
Gotcha. You live this world all the time. Is there a particular timeline we should be thinking about? When are we going to get clarity with that?
Surprisingly late. And the IRS has a history of dropping these kind of things without any fanfare, without any advance notice. We've seen this a lot more the last couple of years. They're certainly shorthanded right now too. So it's one of those, it's worth having on your list, check with your CPA if you think this might be something that applies with you as you get closer to year end and see.
Now, Business of Tech Plus subscribers get interviews early in the dynamic ad-free feed. This one's already queued up. It's a benefit of supporting the show. Visit businessof.tech/plus to sign up and get early access. The interview will release for everyone else on the weekend. Now, I want to thank ABC Solutions, a Business of Tech Plus supporting vendor. They specialize in supporting accounting needs for managed service providers and IT firms. Check them out at abcsolvesit.com. I also want to thank Sales Builder, a Business of Tech Plus supporter. Focus on your IT sales workflow with the power of automation and visit them at salesbuilder.com. That's BUILDR.com. Our live stream support is provided by Rhythms, delivering 5G connectivity solution for MSPs, reliable internet access for everyone. Visit rythmz.com for more information. Vendors, you too can get mentioned on the live show. It's part of our vendor support level at Business of Tech Plus. If you'd like to get more out of the show and support the show directly, check out all our membership options at businessof.tech/plus. There's a free tier with access to daily stories and transcripts, insider access for bonus analysis and early access to interviews, that dynamic ad-free feed, and the leadership tier with exclusive vendor briefings, data reports, and behind-the-scenes insight into the channel. Every membership directly supports independent reporting and helps me continue bringing you research-driven coverage of the IT services industry. Again, that link, businessof.tech/plus. If you have a question or are listening to the recording, send it in at question@mspradio.com or put it in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. Thanks for joining me for the Business Tech Lounge, and I will see you next time.
Part of the MSP Radio Network.